Our next cipher is one that was developed by the Germans back in World War I. It's called the ADFGX cipher. So the first thing we're going to do is learn a new way to create a 5x5 key grid using something called a permutation. We're going to describe how the ADFGX cipher works, and then we're going to do a sample encryption and then a sample decryption as well. So one of the things that we have done in a previous cipher, back in the Playfair cipher, is filling a 5x5 grid with all the letters of the alphabet. Back in the old days, we used a keyword to generate that grid. That's going to be a little bit confusing for the ADFGX cipher. In the new days, today, we're going to use a permutation of the letters. So first thing I got to do is tell you what a permutation is. A permutation you can do to any set of objects. It's just an arrangement of those objects in order. So for an example, if the objects that we're looking at are the numbers 1, 2, and 3, here are the different ways that you can arrange them in order. 3, 1, 2, 1, 3, 2, 2, 1, 3, 3, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, and 1, 2, 3. There are 6 different ways that we can arrange those numbers in order. So if you want to do a permutation of the letters, you can do something like this, right? So those are all the letters arranged in order. Well, they're not quite all the letters. You might have noticed, if you're really detail-oriented, that the letter J is missing. If you think back to our Playfair days, you're going to understand why that's the case, so that we have 25 letters for our 5x5 grid. So we're going to make a grid out of those letters. And what we're going to do is just go row by row, taking the letters in order of the permutation. So for the first row, we take the first 5 letters, B, P, R, T, S. For the second row, we take the next 5 letters, G, I, V, A, Z. Then the next 5 letters, then the next 5 letters, and then the next 5 letters. So that gives us our grid, very similar to what we did back in the for the Playfair cipher. So here are the basic steps once we have figured out our key grid of the ADFGX cipher. So we make our 5x5 key grid, as I mentioned before. We label each row and column with A, D, F, G, and X. Then we encrypt each plaintext letter with an ordered pair of those labels. And ordered pair, very much like we did back in our algebra days when we dealt with X coordinates and Y coordinates in the Cartesian plane. And then for good measure, to make it extra confusing for anyone trying to decrypt it, we're going to do a columnar transposition cipher on those ordered pairs. All right, so for our key, we're going to have a permutation of the alphabet, again, excluding J, so we can have a 5x5 grid. And we also want a keyword for when we do the columnar transposition. So we're going to use that permutation to make a 5x5 grid. We're going to place A, D, F, G, and X above the 5 rows, and then we're also going to place those same letters to the left of the 5 columns. For each letter in the plaintext, we're going to look for that letter within the grid, and then we're going to encrypt that letter with a pair of letters from A, D, F, G, and X as follows. The first letter is going to be from the row that the plaintext letter is in. So you look at what the row is in, you look for the A, D, F, G, and X that's across from it horizontally. The second letter is going to be from the same column that that plaintext letter is in. Again, A, D, F, G, or X, depending, that is in that same column. And then once you have all those letters, we're going to perform a columnar transposition on the resulting ciphertext using the keyword. Again, just to remember that you write the ciphertext in another grid, write out the columns in the order of alphabetical order according to the keyword. All right, so here's an example. Here's a key that we had, same one we had before with the permutation, but we're going to use the keyword Rocky for the columnar transposition. And the plain text that we're going to encrypt is "That trick never works." So here's what our grid looks like once we use our permutation to create it. Then we're going to take that grid, put an A, D, F, G, and X on the columns and along the rows. And then we're going to, our first level of taking the ciphertext, we're going to use that grid to figure out the ordered pairs. So for instance, our first letter of our plain text is T. And if we look at T within the grid, it is across from the letter A, and it is below the letter G. So our first pair of letters in our ciphertext is going to be AG. For H, that is across from X, and it is below D. So our second ordered pair is going to be XD. And our A is across from D, it's below G. So our third ordered pair is DG. And then we keep on going with the remaining letters. I'll let you check those if you want to. And then we're going to smash those together just like we do with any ciphertext. And so this isn't the final ciphertext of our encryption. It's just the first level before we do the columnar transposition. All right, so now the one thing you might notice is that the keyword is Rocky. It has 5 letters, which means that we're going to want to take our first level of ciphertext and split it into groups of 5. Each of those groups of 5 then go into a row, and we keep adding rows until we get to the end of our ciphertext. Notice that we have 2 letters at the end that don't have anything to fill in, so we fill those in with null characters. I'm going to use H and Q. So for our final ciphertext, we go in alphabetical order. The first in alphabetical order in our keyword is C. So we take that column, and that's the first part of our final ciphertext. After C, the next one in alphabetical order is K. We use that column for the next bit of our ciphertext. Then comes O. We're going to use that column. Then comes R. We're going to use that column. And then finally Y. We write that column. That gives us the last part of our ciphertext. We smash those together, and that is the final ciphertext using the ADFGX Cipher. Now for decryption, we're going to do the exact same thing in the opposite order. Now remember, opposite order means we start at the end and work our way back to the beginning, which means that when we get our ciphertext, which is this, the first thing we're going to do is not work on the ADFGX part, but work on the columnar transposition, because that came at the end. So one thing we're going to do is figure out how many letters go in each column. We have 20 letters. We have 5 letters in our keyword, which means that each column is going to have 4 letters. And so you may have noticed in the ciphertext up there, I split our ciphertext into groups of 4 letters. Each of those is going to be a column. Notice I put the letters of the word Rocky in alphabetical order, so you can see that. First column is GAGA, then GFFG, then ADGDG, etc., going all the way along. Now we put those columns in the order of the regular word Rocky, and there's what we get for that. So that means our first level of ciphertext, when we take that in, we go across row from row. So we get AAGGG, AGAFA, DDGFX, and then AGAGX. Now we're going to take that ciphertext, put it in pairs, because remember, our next one we're going to do is decrypt the ordered pairs from the ADFGX cipher. So we're going to put those in ordered pairs to see what we get for our plain text. Now, of course, we're going to need our key grid. We are going to need the ADFGX in the appropriate place above the columns and to the left of the rows. And then we're going to get our plain text from each of those ordered pairs. So for instance, our first bit of our plain text is we have the letters AA. If we look for the letter that's across from A and below A, that's the letter B. Similarly for GG, we look for the letter that's across from G and also below G, and that's U. For GA, we want the letter that's across from the G on the left, below the A up top. That gives us the letter L, and we get 2 GAs, so that's 2 L's actually. For FA, we want the letter that's across from the F, below the A, that's W. Next, we want across from D, below D, that's I. Then we want across from G, below F, that's N. Across from X, below A, that's K. Across from G, below A, that's L again. And then across from G, below X, that gives us E. And then we get the plain text Bullwinkle. All right, so that should give you an idea about how to encrypt and decrypt using the ADFGX Cipher. I encourage you to look at the activities on the PDF file that's included with this video.